July.
I've done it, but you are a co-host now. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I can hear on the pub next door to me the bell chiming, so it is certainly 7 o'clock. Alternative occupation this evening would be going next door to the pub, but I've got the better option. We've got a annual general meeting of the Somerset Bus Partnership. I'd like to welcome you all this evening. We've got 23 people currently on the call. Thank you very much for being prepared to give up an hour or so of your evening to this meeting. We do have a couple of apologies. Martin Strauss, who's been one of our board members and is standing currently for the Taunton Council, unfortunately can't be with us this evening. And also Lee Fletcher, who was going to give a talk this evening. Lee's wife, unfortunately, has been taken, I believe, quite seriously ill. So he's not going to be able to join us, which is a great pity. He's promised to give his talk at some future date, so we'll let you know when he can give that talk. So the purpose of this evening is to give you an update on the progress over particularly the past 12 months. It's been unbelievably busy and in some ways a pretty successful 12 months, but there are lots of challenges ahead of us. We've got nominations for the board going forward, and there may be issues that you would wish to raise. So we'll have an opportunity for that as well. So what I'm going to endeavour to do is to screen share. I try this again. Can you all see this?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, can do.
So just backtracking a little bit further than the last 12 months, just to look at the context in which the events of the last 12 months have been happening. Some of you may have seen this chart before, but bus journeys in the decade up to the start of COVID had declined in Somerset they'd nearly halved, huge decline. And Somerset County Council in their BSIP admitted that Somerset had the worst rated bus services in the whole country. We had the second lowest bus journeys per head of population in the country. And Somerset had got a number of different priorities over those 10 years, but buses, I'm afraid, hadn't been one of those priorities. Yet, in ways they should have been, because nearly half of all carbon emissions in Somerset comes from transport. But it wasn't just the buses which weren't a priority of the county council at the time. The bus infrastructure, bus stops, bus shelters, bus stations even hadn't been a high priority for most of the district councils, and many of them were not in a particularly good condition. As these photographs show, these been taken.
I'm doing this.
These been taken around the county. There's a lot of background noise. Could you switch your microphones off, please?
Yeah,
I'm going to ask, I'm going to mute everyone. So
Thank you, Tony.
Peter, you'll need to unmute yourself. Peter, you need to unmute yourself.
I've managed to do that. Thank you, Tony.
Well done.
Thank you very much. And it's not just these three. We've got a frightening number of shots of poor bus shelters, and we could show you some shots of bus stations which need action. So the infrastructure that Somerset Council, the new Somerset Council, is going to take responsibility for, there needs to be an awful lot of work done to improve it. Now, this is the man who changed everything. May not be every person's favourite man, but Boris, having been Mayor of London and seen the impact of buses in London, Boris changed the political climate about buses quite significantly. He was and is a real bus advocate, and Boris introduced Bus Back Better. That was back in March 2021, and Tony Rees, who's one of our co-chairs, and you've heard on the call already, Tony felt that given the problems that Somerset had with its buses and its bus infrastructure, there ought to be a Somerset-wide group to advocate the case for buses on behalf of bus users. And so he approached a number of us to say, why don't we form the Somerset Bus Partnership? And that's what happened. And so we've been going, we were formed in April 2021. So this is our second anniversary. And Bus Back Better set a standard that we wanted to emulate. So Somerset County Council employed WSP, one of the leading transport consultants, and they did also consult with us as bus users in the Somerset Bus Partnership, and developed a bus service improvement plan with big ambitions, because the aspirations of Bus Back Better were promising a transition for buses throughout England, but that transition was going to be particularly large for Somerset because we were starting from a relatively poor, if not relatively very poor position. And so Somerset put forward an eye-watering bid of 163 million. Staggering bid, but they put it forward, and it was a well-argued, very impressive document, always worth going to have a look at it. This is what a county council which hadn't invested in buses was now saying needed to be done in Somerset. Well, we didn't get 163 million, we got 7% of it, but we still got 11.9 million. And the decision was made, and we think quite rightly, that, okay, we haven't got anything like what we wanted, but to make an impact, we had to focus it. And the decision was made to focus that money on the county town of Taunton. At the same time as all this was happening, we had elections in Somerset for the new council, which was going to be a 5-year term. And the Somerset Bus Partnership came out with its own manifesto, a bus manifesto, and we sent it to every single candidate who was standing in those elections. And of real significance, a lot of good aims in that manifesto, but probably the most important thing in it was that we said Somerset needed to spend significantly more money on buses and spend at the level that other councils in the southwest were doing. At the time, we were spending something like 45% less than the average of other councils in the area. And we set the target that by the end of the 5-year period, we should at least be up to the average of other southwest councils. It was a very, and is a very ambitious target, not made easier with all the spending challenges that Somerset is now faced with. But our bus manifesto was not only accepted by all the opposition parties, it was also accepted by the then leading party in Somerset, the Conservatives. And so as we transition from the old Somerset County Council to the new Somerset Council, we saw a change in political makeup. It became a Lib Dem dominated council. But from our point of view, the Somerset Bus Partnership's point of view, the really important thing was that nearly 2/3 of all the newly elected members of the Somerset County Council across all the parties, all of them had endorsed our bus manifesto. So we actually have, back 12 months ago, or 11 months ago, we had elected a council which perhaps for the first time was a pro-bus council. We'd made buses an important issue in Somerset and one that councillors were prepared to battle for. And we think that was a really significant step. It wasn't all good at that time, though, because there were already yet further cuts in train, having had a nearly 50% drop in bus services. Back in May of last year, there were further cuts. They were affecting Wells and Bridgewater and even Taunton, but particularly so, they were hitting Yeovil. And it's interesting how people react to bus cuts. In Yeovil, Lynn came and became our bus champion. She joined the Somerset Bus Partnership, but every bit as important, if not even more so, she set up the Yeovil Bus Users Group. And she's been a very powerful voice to argue the case for Yeovil buses, and has demonstrated, and as an example to every bus user group in Somerset and outside for that matter, just how effective bus campaigning can be. At the time, the direct link, a crucial bus service between Taunton and Yeovil, was ended. There was no longer any direct link. One of the most significant successes that's been achieved in the last 12 months is to see that link restored. There are so many challenges in Yeovil on bus services and also on the bus station, but now there is a group led by Lynn who is battling with the town council now on its side, with the Chamber of Commerce, to see things improved. It's a real example of what our bus user groups, with the support of Somerset Bus Partnership, can do to galvanize support and make a difference. It's not easy, and it's not win-win-win by any means all the time, but it is a battle, and we are progressively moving forward and seeing real advances achieved. And in September of that year, in a new partnership with the new council, ourselves worked with Somerset Council to launch their Bus It campaign. The Bus It campaign is designed to encourage more people to use the buses. It's very much based on the fact bus it or lose it, or use it or lose it. The best way of protecting a bus service is to get more people to use it, and that's what the Bus It campaign has been doing. And we were involved in its development and have been strong proponents of it, very much at a local level through our bus groups ever since. And the news started to get better because in January, the benefit of that 11.9 million started to kick in. And at least in Taunton, we saw a £1 bus fare introduced in central Taunton. A huge step forward. And also at the same time, night buses were reintroduced into Taunton, Bridgewater, Minehead, Charge, and Wellington. Not, unfortunately, to Yeovil, but that's very much on the agenda, something we're continuing to battle for. So Taunton's still a real impact from the bus service improvement plan award that went to Somerset. And what we've seen is a real response in increased bus numbers. They've gone up by a reported 25%. At the same time, we pioneered, with the help of particularly David Northey, who's worked in the rail industry for many years, has now joined the Somerset Bus Partnership. He's opened up a dialogue with the two major rail companies, and work is now underway at trying to improve bus rail integration and the promotion of the integrated links across Somerset. A lot more work needs to be done, but it's in motion now and it's being developed. And we've had successes. As I've mentioned, we've had the 54 service restored in Wales. Particularly with Rosa, there's been a very successful campaign to keep the 126, albeit it's in a truncated form. It doesn't, unfortunately, go all the way to Weston-super-Mare, but that's outside of the Somerset Council area. That's in North Somerset, but it goes as far as the border, and a new service we've put in with the help of Somerset Council, and we very much appreciate the support that Somerset Council has given to that route. We just would like to see it extended all the way through to Weston as it was previously, but that depends on another council choosing to facilitate that. We've also seen in Wales battles to keep the 1373 and the 172, and so far they proved successful, though there have been changes. We've also campaigned successfully to keep the evening D2 service, a vital service. I speak with strong passion on this because it's my area between Frome and Bath, and again with the help of Somerset Council. And we've played a role in the rollout of those evening bus services emanating out of Taunton. But the news got even better in January because the government recognised the challenges both of the climate change crisis, but also the cost of living crisis, and they introduced the £2 bus fare. Initially, only through to March, but we and others campaigned that that should be extended, and it's now extended to the end of June, as is the bus recovery grant. That's a grant which keeps a lot of our bus services running, government funding, which has been going on ever since the beginning of COVID, because COVID undermined bus services and the use of bus services across the country. The concern is that the bus recovery grant and the £2 fare, both of which are seeing a significant increase in the use of buses, getting close to what they were before COVID struck. Those support operations funded by the government are currently scheduled to end at the end of June. But the buses minister, and you can see him here, he is working on a scheme, and he's seeking the support of MPs, particularly, so I'm told, Conservative MPs, to get this over the line. He wants to establish a longer-term bus funding arrangement in England, something that has, I think, been the wish of bus campaigners right across the country for quite some time. So all power to his elbow. And we've approached our MPs in Somerset, all our Somerset MPs, urging them to support this. And if any of you haven't written to your MP about buses, then this is a good time to do it. Write to them, say just how important getting proper funding of buses, getting an extension to that £2 bus fare, which is making buses that much more affordable for many people faced by the cost of living crisis. We need to keep that £2 fare going. We need to find a way of funding buses on a long-term basis and not just doing it for three-month extensions, which makes it very difficult for bus operators, let alone councils, to plan their activities. Buses need to have long-term planning. So all strength to Mr. Holden's campaign, and we hope that our MPs will be supporting him. So that's the good news. But it's not all good news, because I went down to Taunton to a bus stall, as did a number of us on this call, thinking that people in Taunton would be delighted with what's happened to buses. They've got evening buses, they've got £1 bus fares. But what I was hearing on the bus stall was the buses are not reliable. What's the point of having £1 bus fares when the buses are not reliable? Bus operators have been faced with lots of problems, organizational problems, staffing problems, shortage of drivers, cost of fuel going through the roof. It's not been easy for them. But the unreliability of the buses, particularly in the southern half of the county, did prompt Somerset Council to take the unusual step of writing a public letter to Buses of Somerset expressing concern about the unreliability of buses. Steps are being taken to address that. Very significant steps are being taken, but it's only slowly having benefits, but it is improving, we understand it, and so it needs to. The other challenge that most bus users have faced is that particularly First Bus has, in the face of the very volatile situation on funding, on fuel prices, and the difficulty of getting drivers, they've had to make a lot of timetable changes. They've been typically changing their timetables every 3 months. Now, for those of us who can download it onto our mobile phones and who have bus times on our phones and can track where buses are on their routes, which is the amazing information which is now available, real-time information which is available online, that's a situation, these changes we can cope with. For those people who don't have access to online, or because their area doesn't happen to have a mobile signal, they need printed information, and they need it ahead of the changes. They need accurate information at bus stops. They need wide availability of bus timetables. You go into any tourist information centre in Somerset, and the thing they most often get asked for is bus timetables. At our bus stalls, we have people queuing up asking for bus timetables, which we always make sure we have. But printed bus timetable information isn't available in the accessible levels it ought to be, and the information at bus stops is often out of date and therefore incorrect. So this is one of our big campaigning issues at the moment, is to improve the availability of printed timetables. Just because the world has moved into a digital era, it doesn't mean all bus passengers have moved into a digital era. We have a lot of people financially challenged or older people who are not comfortable with online information. And it should be in the bus operator's interest to make sure that information is available to their customers in a form that they can use, which is many cases is a printed form. And we battle and battle and battle to improve the availability of printed timetables. But first and foremost, the Somerset Bus Partnership is a campaigning organisation, and we do make a lot of noise for ourselves. We're on BBC Radio Somerset quite often. A number of us have been on. Rosa and Lynn are good examples of people who've been on television, BBC Points West. We get ourselves in the local newspapers across the county. And interestingly, we've also created our own media outlet, primarily through Facebook. The bus user groups across the county have created Facebook pages, and places like Yeovil and Frome have got well over 1,000 followers who do regularly access information on Facebook, and it's become a very important tool for us to get our message out. In fact, 125,000 people have seen our messages. That's partly from our own Facebook pages, but it's also because people repost our posts onto other community sites and gets it widespread coverage across the county. And then the other thing we've been doing to get the message out is holding bus stalls. Last September was the Catch the Bus month. Every month in Somerset should be Catch the Bus month, but we actually hold it once a year, part of the national campaign. As you can see, lots and lots of stalls we ran in September this year, and Somerset actually organised more events than in any other county in England. That's a huge tribute to the bus user groups across the county, and we also think to Somerset Bus Partnership for helping coordinate some of that activity. But a lot of hard work done by a lot of individuals. One of the things about our bus user groups, and here we are showing you where our 11 bus user groups are, is many of them are run by 1, 2, 3 or 4 people. And those people devote an enormous amount of their own time to running those groups. We need more people to help them. We need more people at all levels in the Somerset Bus Partnership to get through this. Our real strength is people and our campaigning voice. The fact that we've got 125 bus champions who've been put forward by councils across Somerset gives us a strong voice, as do our 11 bus user groups. And here we are actually giving out the information at various bus stalls in the county, and another load. And we could show you, I think, I'm not sure actually how many groups bus stalls around, but it was a tremendous number of bus stalls. And we thought we'd probably spoken to something like 20,000 people by the end of our bus stalls. So, as I mentioned, we have 125 town and parish councils have appointed bus champions to liaise with the Somerset Bus Partnership. It's hugely important, and it's why Somerset Council pays attention to what we say. We're engaging with town and parish councils across Somerset. Our board meets with Councillor Mike Rigby, who's the lead councillor in Somerset on transport matters, and his officers. And we have really good meetings. There is a common interest in improving buses in Somerset. A lot of the time we're on the same page. We may disagree as to some priorities, and we may want Somerset to spend more money than they can at this stage, but we're working towards the same end game. We meet with the bus operators. Tomorrow I'm meeting with First West of England. They operate buses in the north of Somerset, and I know that Lynn and Tony have recently met with First Southwest, who operate buses of Somerset in the middle and the south of Somerset. So we're meeting with the major operators, but we also meet the smaller operators too. And actually, we all share the same interest. We want to see more people on the buses. We lobby our Somerset MPs. And it's interesting, since the efforts of, we believe, ourselves and some of our bus user groups, particularly those in Wells and in Yeovil and in Frome, we're seeing a greater responsiveness from our MPs. I think we need to keep on pushing them further, because we need them to lobby the Transport Minister about the need to fund buses. And we've gained recognition by Somerset. Tony and I are co-chairs of Somerset's bus user and stakeholder group, and our co-chairs are all members of the Somerset Bus Advisory Board. So I think with the help of the 11 bus user groups, with the help of the people on this call, we've achieved a lot in the past 12 months, probably more than we would have thought possible this time last year. But there's more to be done. We need to improve, particularly evening and weekends bus services. We need more accessible information about the seemingly ever-changing bus times. We certainly need more reliable bus services. And it's also time to start the big push for our buses to go electric and hydrogen. And what we'd also like you to do, because we've evolved in the last month or so into a membership organisation. Yes, we've got 125 bus champions nominated by local councils. But Tony will update you later on, but we're now seeing more and more people joining us as members of the Somerset Bus Partnership. We need you to join us. Needn't cost you any money, though we'd be delighted if you'd make a donation when you join us. What we really want is to have a network of people who we know will campaign with us on bus issues, because what we see is politicians do respond to the voice of people, and they respond more to the voice of ever more people. Yes, it's great to have 125 councils represented through our bus champions, but we'd like to build a membership base of a few multiples of that. And we want to get people to lobby their MP. Undoubtedly, MPs listen to what their constituents are saying, and we need to lobby our MPs to call for that £2 bus fare to be maintained going forward beyond the end of June, and to ensure better funding for buses, but also to encourage more people to use buses. So that's the 12 months that we've been working on. We're looking forward to the next 12 months. We think it could be another very successful time for buses. So, would anybody like to comment on all of that? You can raise your hand down at the bottom of, certainly Paul Stevens, you're muted at the moment.
I'm not now.
Thank you, Paul.
All I'd like to say really is the things coming back to the area, from being out of the area for 10 years, coming back, the change I've seen in that 10 years compared to what it was to what it is now is destroying really. The timetable that we did have when I left was that published by, that's just for South Somerset. I want to get back to that.
I think we're all with you on that, Tony.
Yeah.
All with you on that.
The most important thing I see at present, or most important things, one is the £2 fare, single fare. That has been a success. That should be carried on, but how that is done and kept in a commercial position that the operators can do that as well is something of discussion between Parliament and county councils, etc. But that £2 single fare is the best thing that's happened for many a year.
Okay, I agree with you. Can I move on to some other, because we've got a lot of hands up. Thank you, Paul. It's down as Anthony Lamb. And
hello.
Hello, Anthony.
Hello, I'm near Wells. I'm in near Wedmore on the 67 bus route. We have about 4 or 5 buses a day, and they're not consistent, so you never know when they're coming. My question for you is, after that very interesting but rather depressing roundup of this last year, what are your expectations for next year?
Right, the expectations, I think we have to believe what Rishi Sunak said earlier this year, that buses are a really important consideration for the government. That's when they decided to extend their funding further through to the end of June. It was good news that the new Prime Minister is recognising and identifying and chose himself to announce the extension of funding for buses. Somerset Council, the new council, certainly talking as I and my colleagues do to the likes of Mike Rigby, they are very keen to see improvements to the buses. Their priority at the moment, they say, is to maintain bus services, at least at the level that we've already got, but then to start to see them improved. The problem for the new council is not the cost of buses, but the cost of all the other services, particularly social services, that they are obliged to pay for. And that limits what they can spend on buses. So in the immediate future, Somerset Council isn't going to be able to spend significantly more on buses. But having talked to some of the leadership team on Somerset Council, I know it is a high priority for them, and that there is a strong wish to invest more in buses. So I think for the next few months, the priority will be to maintain the services, and I think we will see that. I don't think we'll see a continuation of the cuts that we'd seen leading up over the previous 10 years. And then progressively we will see an improvement. Whether that will deliver in Wedmore in the immediate future is something that I think it would be worth sitting down and talking to you about that at some stage as to how those improvements could be introduced and what sorts of services you're looking for. Moving on, if I may, to Dee Charles.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Dee Charles, Representative Bus Champion. I like that title, for Norton Fitzwarren Parish Council. We've been out and about in the village on our evening buses, the new evening buses, but we do face some challenges. We went along, when I say we, it's my husband and myself, we put new timetables in all the bus stops, made it so easy for people to come along and get on the evening buses. Only to find a week or so later, along came First Bus and changed everything, which was not nearly as easy to read as the information we put out there. But hey ho, we just went back and changed it all again. One of the things we did do that we found quite useful was to approach some of the hostelries that we visited on the route, pubs, restaurants, etc., and explain to them that we had evening buses and it would be a good idea to let all their locals and local people know that they could indeed get on a bus and go somewhere else. Now, that might sound not very productive for them until we reminded them that, of course, other people could get to them, which was also really good. So that's another way of promoting what goes on there. And we've also made sure that in our parish council magazine, all the timetables are up to date, which is quite a good way to get the word about. We have had a few issues with First Bus in that they keep producing information about bus stops and routes that are no longer used, but we're slowly working on all that. So I think it's onward and upward, and we shall just keep promoting, particularly the evening buses. I did mention that I did wonder if some of the drivers were coming off the daytime services to drive some of the evening ones, because as they are council sponsored, they do face penalties if they don't run. So, I mean, I know that might sound a little bit negative, but they're still going to have to recruit drivers to cover them anyway. But I thought that might have been adding to the issues with some of the daytime buses. But I think that the work that's going on is amazing. And as long as we all keep pulling for this and approaching everybody we can, then we're going to get somewhere.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you for putting up bus timetables in the bus stops and bus shelters. It's something that is one of the most useful things we can do on a practical level, where the bus company hasn't done that task, and it gives the information that people so desperately need. There are quite a few hands up. We'll get to you as quickly as we can. Sarah Hill. You're on mute at the moment, Sarah.
Good evening, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm new to this is my first meeting in the Somerset Bus Partnership. And I'd like to say thank you very much for being able to join it. I've been using buses for most of my adult life. I have my disabilities. I rely on buses, to be fair. I find that I live in Puriton, so it's a village outside Bridgewater. The service currently is every 2 hours, and I face the difficulty in that only a short time back one can connect with another, like going onto Burnham and that sort of path. Well, now we find as bus users that, and also speaking with bus drivers up and down to get their perspective, that it's dwindled. The numbers of recently in the last year has dwindled. People using the bus service where this sort of Bridgewater location, and it's a concern to be fair because that won't aid in the bus service, and it can lead to isolation. I don't want to move because I like farm living. I've only been here for a little bit years. To be fair, from the time I moved here to now, the change is dramatic. I'm just asking if there's anything apart from the bus drivers. I don't know if you've heard their perspective on it. Would you like to?
We do get to talk to bus drivers, particularly online. In my area, the Fruman Villages Facebook group has quite a lot of drivers on there. We get quite a lot of feedback. A lot of it is very helpful. They sometimes give us warning of activities well in advance as well. So we find it very useful. I think one thing in terms of your bus services, which we'd urge everyone to do, as well as lobbying locally and with your bus user group and with us, is also talking to your county councillor, because they're also a very powerful influence on activities by the county council, the unitary council in Somerset. So if you've got concerns, particularly about any bus route or unreliability of a bus service, then make sure your county councillor is aware. They get paid for that job, so make sure they work. Katrina, I saw that you were nodding in support of an earlier call. What have you got to say? Would like to hear it. You're on mute at the moment, Katrina. There we are.
Hi, yeah. I'm a bus user in Taunton. I have been a bus user for many years. I know quite a lot of the drivers who chat away to me, or quite a lot of them have my phone number and will ring me and talk to me and all the rest of it. One of your earlier people were asking about the daytime shift being taken off of their daytime shift to cover the evening services. I know for a fact that that has been done. I can't say it's still being done, but I know when the evening buses first started, certainly that was the issue, that they would take services off during the day so that they could utilise the drivers for the evening buses. And I know a couple of the drivers were asked to do a split shift. which some of the drivers weren't happy about, which caused great tension within the workforce. Whether that's all been totally resolved now or not, I don't think it's been totally resolved, but certainly with the drafting in of bus drivers from other areas has helped alleviate the pressures there. But then that's just taking issues from one area and putting them somewhere else, because now that we've got these bus drivers on loan, where these bus drivers come from are going to be short of drivers because their drivers are up here driving for us. So it is very much a catch-22 situation that, yes, they do need to recruit more bus drivers if they want to keep this level of service going. But that's not the reason that I raised my hand. It was just I was nodding along. The reason I raised my hand and the question that I would like to put out there, I'm not expecting an immediate answer because it goes into too much detail and everything, but with the £1 and £2 fares, which are absolutely fantastic if you are only using one single bus per day, fantastic, well done, brilliant, super job for everybody, saving people money, brilliant. But if you, like me, have to catch 2 buses or more per day, actually you're making us worse off because they've retracted the Taunton area M ticket. So we're not able to buy Taunton zone area tickets on the M tickets anymore because of the £1 and £2 fares, which is actually costing myself an extra £30 a month, which in this current climate, if you're having to do that every single month, it soon mounts up. So all I would say is, although these £1 and £2 fares are great if you're only using one bus, if you are using more than one bus, at least give your customers the option. So still have the £1 and £2 fares, fantastic for those that only use the one bus. But if the Taunton area M tickets could be reinstated, at least passengers would then be able to make a choice of which ticket they want to get, rather than being forced into paying more money for tickets and using a hell of a load more paper, damaging our environment with cutting down trees and everything. At least people would then have a choice.
Thank you, Katrina. I know at the Taunton bus stall that issue was raised with us about people who made a number of journeys in the day. It was proving to be more expensive as a consequence of the withdrawal of that M ticket. I know that Somerset Council is aware of that issue, and after this call I will raise it again with Mike Rigby, and we will raise it in discussions we have with First. Alan Peters, I'm going to go to next. Alan is, dare I say it, a bus operator. We're delighted to have you on the call, Alan. I know you come to many of our bus campaigning meetings. The floor is yours, Alan.
Before I start, one comment on Katrina's point. It is possible, because the short-termism of everything that government and councils actually do, because First get a reimbursement for the £1 tickets and the £2 tickets, it's possible that they would end up losing money if they had the zonal ticket. Now, I don't know this for a fact, but it's a possibility, because there's obviously a reimbursement being paid back to them, and they have to prove the reason for the reimbursement. But what I wanted to say is a little bit negative, to be perfectly honest, Peter. As my understanding is that the Transport Minister wants the longer term solution to bus funding, but it seems to me, and you might correct me on this, that the £2 fare and the BRG ends in the beginning of July, but his idea of a longer term future for bus funding doesn't start until maybe 2024 or 2025, when they can reorganise bus service operators grant, which is what they seem to want to do to give extra funding. They seem to want to try and do it all through that. And personally, I think the £2 fare is brilliant, with certain caveats, but whether they will actually, the sounds I hear is that they don't want to extend anything they've got at the moment beyond the end of June. But having said that, they didn't want to do it beyond the end of February or whenever it was last time. But if it's not extended, I think it might become a problem.
Alan, I hear your comments, and I'm sure you've got good sources for that. I think it just demonstrates that everyone on this call, if you would, to write your MP urging that we need to see support for buses and the £2 fare extended after the end of June. We are voters, we are constituents, we do have an influence. We have that influence, we should actually use it and write to our MPs. Linda, talked a lot about you already this evening.
I know.
Linda,
I think I'm in the wrong place.
the Yeovil bus lady, here she is. To you.
Great. Linda the bus lady, yeah, fab. Right. It was more to do with something that Katrina raised, in the fact that I'm saying she, that's really rude. Sorry, Katrina, you said that you were worried about the additional bus drivers coming in and helping out. I was in a meeting with, well, I've been in two meetings. One was with Mark Morgan Hughes, which is the operations, no, that's not, the commercial director, and also Richard Gagg, who is the operations manager. And I was discussing this because some of our Yeovil drivers came to Taunton to try and help out. And then we had an issue about it with driver shortages. So that was raised. But also we were assured, Tony and myself, that the other drivers were coming from Cornwall. Now in Cornwall, they have an influx of actual drivers. So they're surplus, and they are the drivers that are then dispatched to other areas, and they're quite amenable in traveling. So I think, don't worry that it's just moving and shunting issues somewhere else, because they've got quite a great recruitment down there and they like to move about. I think they were also mentioning possibly going to Weymouth as well. So yes, but I hear you. I also, they were also talking about the recruitment, and actually the influx has actually been quite positive. It's just the fact that it's taking time to get everybody through the training and things. It's not ideal. It has improved. I can vouch for that, because I also post on the Taunton bus user group. And I'm the one that's got the tweets coming through from everywhere saying this cancellation or that cancellation. It has eased. We had a bit of a blip today, but they are also being watched. So, for example, services that are not running, they are being monitored. And yes, you were right. Richard actually said, yes, the council evening services was putting an extra pressure on drivers. I think that came a bit out of the blue, really, with the BSIP. It wasn't something that they had necessarily planned for. And so when this comes up, suddenly the shortfall of drivers is suddenly shorter. But yes, they are working on it. I can guarantee that. But like I said, it's going to take time. And like for today, we did have a blip with sickness, which is another long-term issue. Okay, well, that's all. That's all, folks. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. just to mention that cross-border routes, I mean, it's not just buses within the boundaries of Somerset that are a concern. It's cross-border routes, and I notice that we've got at least one person, possibly two people from WATAG, which is the Dorset organisation, but someone who has been waiting very patiently for me to come to him is Christopher Hughes. Sorry, Christopher, I've tended to go for the bright yellow light hands when they're raised, as opposed to your patiently waved hand at me. The floor is yours, Christopher. You're on mute at the moment. I can't hear you at the moment, Christopher. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Really sorry. Just can't hear you, Christopher. There's obviously a microphone problem. Would anybody else like to make any comment at this stage?
Stevens is there.
Paul, you'd like to come back?
It's with regard to something I was chatting with Linda about, and that's about the proposals in Taunton for the bus station and reuse of the old bus station, etc., etc. I've had a look at that and I had an idea. Obviously, in Taunton, you have to move away from the parade for out of town buses, but my idea was between the gates of the parade and Bouverie Park, to put something in there, e.g. a bus station and usage for tourists and pedestrians, etc. Looking at the maps, etc., even better, if you go behind where Boots is now, there's a perfect place which could be converted into what they're trying to do to make an area and improve it for bus station in the old car park behind Boots. That could be transferred to where the bus station is, and you'd have a bus station for the same cost right in the middle of Taunton.
I hear what you say. I know there's a lot of work being done by Somerset Council on the location of the bus station. I think that my understanding is that they are going to revamp the existing bus station. There were discussions as to whether it should be moved out to the railway station. There was discussions about keeping the boulevard system, but my understanding is that they're hoping to get a new bus station in the centre.
But it's still a little bit too far out to encourage people to travel by bus more. Whereas looking at it so people didn't have to walk as far, behind the old Boots in that space there is absolutely perfect, and it wants regenerating it already, and it's already flat in a car park. So
Sue Stevens has her hand up too. I think she wants to comment.
Let's go to Sue. Sue, the floor is yours.
With regard to that area behind Boots, the council's already spent quite a bit of money already, making it improving the car park, including facilities for electric cars, and for putting in bike sheds for cyclists, etc. So I think that would be out of the question. And I do believe that we are going to get a revamp, or more than a revamp of the bus station. It's going to be a mobility hub, which is going to be something even better, hopefully. That wasn't what I was really going to talk about. I wanted to say that beginning to feel that there's a divide growing between the rural areas and the urban areas. Everything's being put towards the urban areas, and it seems to me that the council thinks it's done what it needs to do out in the rural areas by having some demand responsive travel, which is okay for maybe people who want to go into town maybe once a week or, you know, whatever, get in and out. But for people who are actually need to get into an urban area because they work there or for some other reason, from a hospital appointment, etc., it's not good enough. When are we going to start seeing some interconnections between the main buses, the main bus routes, and smaller smaller rural areas? That was my question. Has anybody got any answers for that, or will it be in the next phase of improving bus services?
I mean, it's a really difficult issue because it's easier to operate buses in urban areas because there are more people. It makes it more viable. DRT, direct response, demand response, transport. We're seeing a major exercise being rolled out in Wecker at the moment. Literally at the moment. It's too early to see how bus passengers and bus users are going to respond to it. I think it's something for us all to watch to see how viable it proves itself. But the bigger problem will always be in rural areas, just because it's harder to make money out of operating buses in rural areas. So as a priority, I think the priority that the council will set will be the urban areas. But living in a rural area myself, I fully appreciate the importance of any bus service that we might have. D. You're on
Sorry,
mute.
caught me on the hop there. Yes,
Yeah.
I was just reading. If I can briefly go back to Taunton bus station, the one on Tower Street. Taunton doesn't have a very good past reputation for preserving buildings in the town. Now, just a bit of info on Taunton bus station. I'm probably preaching to the converted. You may well know this, but it was operated by the Western National Omnibus Company, and it opened in 1953. That one and Southern, I believe, were parts of the Tilling group of companies that actually opened the bus station. And in 2015, the Transport Trust awarded it a red wheel plaque for its historic value. Now, surely, for heaven's sake, we can reopen it. It is hardly too far out of Taunton. It's very easily accessible, particularly for people who may be, you know, less able than some others of us. And it would seem a nonsense to me to try and rebuild something elsewhere when we have this this transport hub ready-made on the doorstep. We're campaigning for more funds, but it seems silly to try and rebuild something elsewhere, which would only cost more. I don't know if anybody agrees or disagrees with that, but it would make a lot of sense to me.
I can see people are nodding, so I think you're getting some signs of support, if not necessarily verbal support. Tony Rees, coach.
I just wanted to pick up on Sue's comments about rural and urban areas. We did have a problem with DFT, and the bus service improvement plan that Somerset County produced, when they actually started talking to DFT, they were all about pushing urban problems and supporting urban problems. So the final result we got was most of that money had to be spent on urban buses because that's what they were pushing. And a lot of it was on improvement works to produce bus lanes in big towns. So there's a lot of comment made that the money we got from government is mostly being spent in Taunton. That was because, as Peter said earlier, it was decided that if we're actually going to make a difference, it has to be in one place. There was money assigned for mobility and for DRT. We're all watching the events north of us to see whether DRT really works. An awful lot of people have said it never really works, and this will be yet another example of its failure. So we are watching very, very carefully. But part of the money that was given to Somerset County was to improve mobility hubs. That's one reason why Taunton Bus Station is going to get renamed as a mobility hub. And the same will happen in Somerton, which is actually outside of Taunton. And one of the parts of the BSIP plan that got some money and will be developed so that there is an interchange between the through services that run through Somerton and demand responsive or some other form of local service that connects the villages, particularly around Yeovil and Somerton and the areas here. We're very much aware how much of a problem DRT is or can be. I've looked at the new website that they're using. I don't travel to North Somerset very often, so I haven't tried to book it, but I've tried to find out how things are going. And some people are complaining that, no, it doesn't really work. You think you book a bus and they say, well, there isn't one till Thursday week, or it goes in about 10 minutes time, you've got to go now. DRT is a very difficult operation to follow. What we'd like is a lot of our rural bus services back again, but they are expensive. And at the moment, there isn't the money.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Denise Dennis from Wales. Denise, you're on mute at the moment.
Hi.
Hello.
It's always good to hear what everybody else is experiencing or not getting or benefiting from. So some benefits. We've, I think, fought hard to have a 126 service, and we are grateful that Somerset stepped in and produced a subsidy for Libra travel. That service has become a very well used service. So I think from Wells to Cheddar or Axbridge, it has proved a success. And I understand that North Somerset are now talking about making a link on their side. They are actually working towards that. So that may be good news. So that is a positive story. Another positive story is that we have had recruitment of bus drivers from London, or their supply bus drivers, and they have all been very polite. They may not have always known their bus stops, but they've been willing to learn, and they've been chatty and pleasant to the people that use the buses. So that's another positive. The other thing that I just double checked on just now is, and you may know more about it, but I was a bit skeptical about the Somerset Council's Think Travel website when it first came out. Nothing seemed to really give me much information. If I wanted to get from Wells to Bridgewater, for example, it just didn't seem to locate anything available. Whereas now I've just tried it this evening, just now, and it seems to be functioning quite well. If I put in Wells to Taunton for tomorrow morning, it's giving me the link. So it's not a printed timetable, which we have been saying we need to get out, and for people who haven't got online, but maybe we also in Somerset Bus Partnership could be advertising more the Think Travel site. If other people have got good experiences of it, I'd like to know, because I think that is something we could promote. And I think there might have been one more positive thing. I liked, oh yes, the other positive thing is we had a very good visit from Mike Rigby to the town council. He gave us a lot of time, and he indicated that there might be, after they do the Somerset bus station hub, whatever it's called, they then might try to focus on the Wells bus station and look at that becoming a hub. So that's about it.
Thank you very much, Denise. Alan.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting you to come immediately to me. I was just going to raise the actual phenomenal cost of bus operation at the moment. We tendered in November for a number of services in Wecco and got nothing, but that's probably because maybe we were too expensive. But I think the minimal daily cost for a bus working, say, 10 hours is somewhere around £800 per day. You know, ours were £200 a day just to have it, have the pleasure of owning it and parking it, before we ever sent it out and got wages and fuel added onto that. And you know, the actual costs have gone up. It really shook us how much the costs have gone up in the last year, 2 years, certainly since the end of COVID, because the costs nowadays are absolutely phenomenal.
And of course, that cost on supported bus routes has to be paid by the council. So even to maintain their existing supported bus routes is costing councils a lot more money. So when Mike Rigby says he wants to maintain services, that's going to be a higher cost for Somerset just to maintain them. Paul, you're waving.
It's just agreeing with that with Alan. As you know, I'm a transport consultant and worked in the bus industry and rail industry. And from what I'm gathering now, the average to operate a bus is £20 to £25 a mile. I don't know if Alan would agree if that's his findings. It's very expensive.
We never really worked it out on per mile, because the fact we worked the tenders on the fact of what they were, how many miles they did, and then we worked out the fuel consumption. So we didn't have continuous mile, regular running to actually work it from. But we just
well, this is on tendered routes. It worked out about £20 to £25 a mile, because
I'm quite sure you're probably right. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Anyway, nice to see you. Nice to speak to you. Operator. Is there any chance of getting one of the either First or Southwest coaches to come on a chat and face the panel, as it would be now?
I'm sure they're brave enough. We just have to give them the opportunity. They'll be queuing up to come on and face all their bus customers. I'm not sure. We've had face-to-face meetings. Whether they'd want to come on a Zoom meeting, we can invite them, and we will see. I will certainly put that invitation to First Bus in Bristol and First Bus Southwest and see if they will respond, or some of the smaller operators. It's great that Alan comes on to the call and gives us the benefit of a bus operator's perspective. May not be exactly the same as the perspective of First Bus, but it's really useful that Alan is coming on to the call. Susanna, is that a legacy hand, or have you got something you wish to add?
Yeah, I would say something.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been going around doing a survey recently. It came out of bus partnership conversation, and it was about crossing the roads, and that and other conversations have made me aware that there's a big shift either happening or about to happen. People talking about giving up their cars, even in rural areas. Now, this is a really major shift which needs to be dealt with at least at a national level, with switching funds away from well, whatever, cars basically, to public transport and active travel. And I just feel like we need to be thinking in these much bigger terms, as well as locally. It's really brilliant what's happening, but it's really important to recognise, I think, a lot of young people currently in cities and even moving out, people who've, for instance, there's one young woman who moved to Baltonsborough from London during COVID, but she doesn't want to go back to it. She doesn't want to own a car. Young people don't want to own cars because they are properly aware of and proactive about the environment. And a lot of older people who I'm meeting through doing these surveys, people of my age, are disgusted at the traffic and saying, well, we're not going to drive forever. And also we want to see less traffic. We want to be walking again. So I think there's potential for really big shifts, and buses have got to be part of that.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. Certainly, young people living in towns and cities, there's a very clear move away from driving cars and avoiding cars. And I know from talking to older people in the village where I live, quite a number of them said they've had enough of driving cars. They're going to have to rely on buses. We need to have a bus service that allows them to do that. So I agree with the sentiment. How rapidly that move will take place will be determined to some extent by the reliability and the availability of bus services. And so it's a chicken and egg, but I think it's a trend that is being noted, let alone the cost of running a car today. I think we're probably, Tony.
I was just going to add to that, as somebody who hasn't been driving for a year, and people keep looking at me and saying, are you going to start driving again? And my first reaction is, no, I don't want to. And this may be something we need to add into the letters we're writing to MPs pushing the DFT. Because for some people this is important, and I think it's part of our argument for increasing, or at least keeping and then increasing, the funding for buses and getting it on a more regular basis. We're talking about targets this country has. I think somebody said 2040. Sometime between now and 2040 there will be a massive change in car ownership. And that has to go with improvements in public transport, both rail and bus, but particularly buses for those of us in rural areas.
Thank you. Well, we've had, let's see, we've had nearly an hour and a half, so I'm going to draw this discussion to a close, because we do have one other piece of formal business we need to go through. We've had 9 nominations to the board of Somerset Bus Partnership. And so I'm going to just, having talked to one of my co-chairs, Tony, we feel that if people want to volunteer, we're not going to put a limit on the number of people who want to volunteer. So yes, we had asked for 8 people to serve on our board, but as we've got 9 wanting to serve, we're delighted to have them. And as a general point, if any of you feel that you can help the Somerset Bus Partnership, please do make contact with us. I think you've got our contact details. Do make contact with us. We do need particularly administrative help, help with dealing with local emails from different parts of the county, making sure that those issues get picked up and addressed. So we are in need of more help. And so if any of you feel that you can give a bit of your time to working with us here at the Somerset Bus Partnership, we would be delighted. And having made that appeal, I'm going to ask Tony just to give us an update on membership and on the finances of the Somerset Bus Partnership.
Okay, on membership, we did ask that everybody who came to this meeting was a member of Somerset Bus Partnership. It's very simple to join. There is a form on our website, or I can send you a form if you have difficulty filling that in. Most of the people here are, and so we have currently 56 members. That's not quite as many as we have champions who working by the way we used to work. We do need to have members. We are applying for funding from various places. They insist we have a constitution. They insist we have things like an AGM. However boring people find AGMs, we need to do this. And I
That's
think
at all boring, Tony.
I think this evening was definitely not boring. And we've heard a lot of new things, and there are a lot of ideas that have come up that we will need to take on. If you don't feel you had an answer, by all means, email us again. If there's anything you think you can do, we have a limited number of volunteers struggling to do far too much with their small amount of free time they've got available. The website needs looking after, social media needs looking after, our emails and our all our communications need looking after. I'm looking as treasurer and as membership secretary at the moment because we didn't find anybody volunteering. We have currently, I said, 56 members. I also produced an annual statement of accounts for the end of December because I felt that was a sensible time if we're going to have the AGM at this time. By the end of December, we hadn't actually done very much financially. We'd set up a bank account in the summer, and I think it had something like £327 in it. It's now got £3,200. We've had 2 or 3 small grants, and we again will be looking for people to write grant applications. They're not necessarily easy, but there are a lot of small charities that are prepared to fund us, and because they see public transport as important. So yes, at the moment we have £3,200 in the bank. Any volunteers who have worked for us and are expending their own money and really feeling they're running out of their own money, you shouldn't now be supporting us financially. We can and we should be paying for some of the work we do. I think that's all I have to say as treasurer and as membership secretary and as fundraiser in chief. No, I'm not fundraiser in chief. Other people are doing more than I am. But we need help on all those things. Anybody who's put something in the chat that says, well, could we explain a bit more? Happy to, probably outside the meeting. It's difficult to respond in chat while we're talking. But we will be in touch, or please, can you get in touch with us again?
Thank you, Tony. And I look forward to a lot of competition over the fundraiser in chief position within the Somerset Bus Partnership. The more, the better. A particular thank you to the members of the bus user groups thinking of Wells 126, Yeovil, with Liscombe, and I'm sure other people on the call as well. We had Glastonbury and Bridgewater on the call. So they're doing a brilliant job, hugely important. They've done a phenomenal job over the past 12 months. The fact that we've got 11 such active groups is down to their hard work, and we're very grateful to them. So thank you for sticking with us for this hour and 20 minutes. Hope you found it useful. Huge challenges ahead, but we feel that we're no longer pushing water uphill. We feel the council and even the government is much more sympathetic to our cause and your cause. And let's see what we can achieve over the next 12 months, and we'll see you hopefully at a meeting in 12 months' time. But we will be organising meetings in the interim. We're going to have a meeting on coach travel. We're going to have a further meeting on rail travel, and we will have other meetings as well. So we will be in touch. We'll keep you informed. And if you've got news or if you've got issues, then please do make contact with us. We're very accessible people. So thank you very, very much, and have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Dee.